gods. Who are they? What are they? And is it possible that these beings, whose origins are from ancient times, are the unseen catalysts of modern culture? Is it possible that these gods lie behind the most pivotal events, forces, and movements taking place in our nation and around the world at this very moment? Is it possible that what we in the modern world take as nothing more than ancient mythology could actually possess a reality beyond our fathoming? Who is the possessor? The enchanter? The destroyer? And the sorceress? Could a sign that has appeared all over America and the world be linked to the gods of Mesopotamia? And if so, what does it actually mean? Is it possible that the gods are even affecting your life right now? How can you recognize it? And what can you do about it?
Well, here we are. We're back at, I think this is our third take. Third take of After Talk. We're talking about Return of the Gods, book by Jonathan Cahn. You read it. It shifted kind of the way you thought about.
It gave, I guess the best way, it really helped to explain some things that we've been seeing. And it really, I would say it was surprising because the information, we all know the stuff, but it's going to put the puzzle together. It's like seeing the puzzle pieces and you can kind of say, yeah, I think I know what that is. But when you put it together, the clarity is, okay, now I understand what is happening. And it lets us know the spiritual warfare that we're involved in. We can look at culture merely through our own eyes and interpret it via history. Many times people do that. But this really helps us to see the culture, not just through a historical perspective, but also through a spiritual lens to say, now I begin to understand. Because we've always got to remember, everything in the physical comes out of the spiritual realm.
Mm. It's interesting to watch people get it. Week one, they had this foundation, right, of review.
Oh, we just flooded people with all kinds of information. But you had to do that to give people context, because I think that's probably the key, and that's why I keep going back and reviewing, that if you don't understand the context and you just talk about these individuals, demonic spirits, then okay, but when you put it into a context, you go, yeah, now I'm beginning to understand that.
Yeah, it's like we're putting a puzzle together, and the puzzle piece by themselves. But to see that first week, you kind of put all the edges together, and then 2 weeks ago, you've got that next layer in. The people are going, oh, wait, I'm starting to see this picture. Oh, I can identify that. And then we got into the second week and got to see layers. And then we got now to the third week, and just their ability to capture, to gather this idea. So let's review a little bit of those weeks as we put this picture together. Return of the Gods.
So the context by Jonathan Cahn, again, all the information is there. And I encourage people, get the book, read it. Obviously, I can't give all the information, but everything's coming out of that. There's just so much more. That's why I encourage people to get the book. So the premise of the book is that prior to Christianity, well, let's go all the way back to the fall of man. So the fall of man is in control of the earth. God gave him dominion. He lost that, gave that up, forfeited that, man did, when he fell in the garden. And now that dominion has been given over to Lucifer. Lucifer fell from heaven, took a third of the angels with him. So they are the ones then that are the prince of the power of the air and are basically have dominion over this planet in a physical sense. Now, when Jesus came, he gave authority to his disciples and to us over these demonic spirits. Prior to that, these demonic spirits basically ran the world. And what I mean by that is, if you'll begin to look back in ancient culture, you'll see that they were dominated by these who served idols, who served these demonic spirits. Now, they wouldn't call them demons. They would call them the gods. The Babylonians had them. The Greeks had them. The Romans had. Every culture has. We see that today. If a culture is void of Christianity, it will find something to seek, because man has a God void in his lie. So all these demonic spirits and all of their debauchery and immorality and just some of the inhumane things that we look back on cultures, human sacrifice and torture, and I mean, not just human sacrifice, but the suffering of individuals, all those types of things. When Christianity came on the scene, that was banished. Christianity brought a moral code that people said, no, thou shalt not kill. We don't do this. We don't make people suffer. We have respect for one another, male, female, rich, poor. God sees us all the same as I. So we saw that change, and all these temples to Zeus, temples to Aphrodites, to all of these that were there before, and the lay of the land. People would go to soothsayers. The king would go to a soothsayer to find out, all right, what does the medium say? What do the gods say about this? That then began to be diminished or pushed out. Even Rome, who was one of the most harsh towards Christians, they then, within that first century, converted. And Constantine said, no, we're a Christian nation now. And I don't think he was a Christian, but he recognized the power of that, and the church took that. And we've seen that advance through culture, Western civilization primarily, all the way to the United States, because we came out of that Judeo-Christian ethic that we have here. And so all of that was stopped. Morality was back in. Marriage was back in. Male-female was back in. All those things that we believe, we have that strong. We saw that in the 60s that the United States began to move God out of the public scene, out of culture. We saw that with the ruling that said, okay, you can't pray in school. You can't read the Bible in school. You can't have the 10 Commandments in public display. You can't say the name of Jesus when you pray. I mean, you just go down the list, and I think those that are my age remember those times when we did have God in our culture. We were one nation under God. We recognized that. I mean, even some of the most liberal of that time would still confess Christianity and still recognize that. We've come so far from that. So Jesus gave the parable of a man that was demon-possessed. Those demons are exiled, kicked out, exorcised from that person. He says then they go and they roam. The house is clean, talking about the individual. But if something is not put in that house, if there's still a void, that demon will come back and he'll bring 7 more with him, make it far worse. Take that up to culture. We had God in our culture, and God blessed the United States of America, and really blessed any country that would follow after that. Then we expelled God out of our culture, and from the 60s, basically that's where it really manifested. It was happening before. That's when we really saw it. Then we've kicked him out to today. He's nowhere in our culture, nowhere endorsed by our culture. Other gods are treated better than the true God is in the culture here in the United States, and that's the sad thing about it. So when that happened, there was a void. And these ancient gods, these demonic spirits that were once prevalent in culture, in society, in the world, now have seen an opportunity and they are coming back. So what the Return of the Gods does, it takes a look at some of these ancient gods, specifically 3 of them that Israel fell prey to. Baal, we've talked about, that they fell prey to. Worship. I can't believe it, again, the children of Israel worshiping idols.
Oh, man.
And that now that there's this void, these same spirits. Now, each one of these demonic spirits that we'll talk about, the 3, have unique characteristics about them, things that they build their, I use the word personality, their desires and everything. And so just as they did it back then, we are seeing some of the same things emerge today. The Baal was the god of prosperity. They looked to Baal to worship him so they would prosper in all that they do. The emblem of our prosperity is the dollar. I mean, people say, you've got a lot of money, you're prosperous and everything. Probably the thing that we tie all that to here in the United States is the stock market, how that goes up. I mean, every day we look at what's the stock market, and are we doing good, are we doing bad? The emblem for Baal was a bull. The emblem for the stock market is a bull. When we have a bull market, we're doing good. Is that a coincidence? Maybe not. And then we went all through that, talking about that. That's in that last session.
So now we are here at the Enchantress, right?
Right.
Ishtar a name for her, and many more. Let's give a little bit of a connection of who she is, who this god is, and then I'll ask some questions.
So the name that you'll see in the Bible for this is Ashtaroth. So you'll always see, or the majority of times, you'll see Baal and Ashtaroth mentioned, that they worship Baal and Ashtaroth. The children of Israel went after Baal and Ashtaroth. You'll hear a reference that they will tear down the poles. I think Gideon was told, go tear down the poles, tear those down. Well, what those were symbols of worship to Ashtaroth. You would have an altar that would be to Baal, and you would have an Ashtaroth pole, which was basically a pornographic symbol in public, and they were placed on high places so everybody could see them. To tear those down. And so you see them together. Ashtaroth, or Ishtar, is more commonly known in that culture, was said to be the wife or the mate of Baal, because you see them there together. And Ashtaroth, Ishtar, was the goddess of sex. We'll see her mentioned in the Greek culture as Aphrodite. You'll see her in the Roman culture as Venus. So that's the era that she brought in, and all the immorality, sexuality, those types of things that were so common with the worship of that day. She had it then, expelled. Now we're seeing that begin to come back in.
Other than just the sexuality piece, there's also tied to a couple other pieces that you would say. You were talking about intoxication.
Well, she was known as the goddess of the alehouse, the tavern, intoxication. And she worked through that because, again, when people are intoxicated, they are more prone to all types of activities, more prone to all types of feelings. Yeah. And so you can just imagine the debauchery that would go on in these festivals where open sexual acts, matter of fact, in worshiping her, they were required, every woman in that culture was required then to go spend a day, at least one day in her lifetime, serving as a temple prostitute. So you can imagine in these alehouses or in their places of worship, I mean, it was a party. Yeah. There would be wild debauchery, orgies that would be taking place, all types of alcoholic beverages, music that would be played. I mean, that's what their worship was, just to take man to his lowest base. No allegiance to any other person except to that goddess. And that was the type of worship that went on. That was prevalent within the culture. You see it among the Babylonians, you see it among the Greeks, you see it among the Romans, of all that went on. That's where that originated from and was endorsed by the culture.
It's crazy to think about our culture, that this is happening now. I mean, the things that you're talking about, I mean, everything's a party and everybody's living intoxication. Everybody, not everybody, but there's a lot of our culture is living intoxicated, is living to numb things, is living under the influence, and our, let me just use the word sexual revolution, but you can't hardly watch TV without nonsense coming in front of you. Let me ask you this, a lot has changed in the last 15 years, but I still kind of grew up in this. You were at the turn of all of this, where we've got the black and whites, you got Leave It to Beaver, and a good old neighborhood that's happening on TV.
Lucy and Ricky did not even sleep in the same bed.
Yeah.
And they were married. And we wonder where little Ricky came from. That was always the question. We didn't, you know the first people who, as a married couple, who slept in bed on TV?
Who?
Fred and Wilma Flintstone. That was
really?
That was the first one. So I say that not as trivia, but you can see that they didn't want anybody even thinking those thoughts back then.
Yeah.
Whereas today, I mean, there's no appreciation, no reverence for the bonds of marriage. That's what Ishtar, that's what the Asheroth, that's what they believed in. They broke down all bounds. They wanted to go deeper, deeper, and deeper, and deeper.
So then what do you think caused that? What if we can go 30s, 40s, 50s, early 60s, what do you think was one of the things or some of the things that started this turn, not to point blame, but to at least identify here, where did this turn? Because we've gone downhill.
So this is the premise of the book that I agree with. This was the eye-opener for me. Because we've seen, it's getting worse, it's getting worse, it's getting worse, and it'll always get worse. Why did it suddenly happen? Christianity's been around for 2,000 years. And in reality, we've held these moral values because of the influence of God in the culture. And I'm talking about Western civilization. Of that guardrail that says, no, we don't go there. We recognize this is wrong because the Bible says it's wrong, and we have a fear of God. Even our own country said our rights come to us by God. When we begin to expel God out of our civilization, specifically, and I think we go back to when we took prayer out of school, not just the act of prayer, but we took God out of school. So now we've got a generation that is being raised. Well, thank God I had godly parents that raised me and taught me the Word of God at home. Think of how many in this culture, my age, that did not have that. Now people were turning away from that. They had no godly influence. Mm-hmm. God was not the foundation. Thus we began to drift. It was at that point that things just started to go haywire, back to the parable where these demonic spirits began to come in. Now, they're not going to come in all at once. They're going to come step by step by step, little by little by little. I look back now, as you said, back to the 60s. Well, that was decades ago. But look how far that we've come now. And you will even admit that we have seen an escalation of that just in the last 15 years to what's happening today. 15 years ago, we were battling for the definition of marriage, one man, one woman. And they would say, well, what goes on in a person's bedroom, keep it private, stay out of our bedroom, let us do what we want to do, tolerate us, we let you do what you want to do. Well, now we've seen that as totally turned around 180 on that. Whereas if I publicly say, no, I believe marriage is between a man and a woman, then I'm a hater. Yeah. I'm the problem. So now, whereas the moral values of the past were the salvation of America, they're the standard of America, now they are looked at as evil. What was once right is now evil.
Which is the rhythm of culture, right? And really, the sad to say, it is the rhythm of the destruction of cultures when you look across history, when they have a standard, when they have a boundary, especially followers of Christ or even Israel in the Old Testament, you'll see they have that. Once you go away from that, then you start getting into this conversation of your choice, my choice, our ideas, there is no truth, there is no morality, which is where we were talking about last week. Then we fall into, well, my feelings matter more than what is
Everyone
right.
does what is right in their own eyes. And not to repeat last week, but again, 2 plus 2 is 4, but it can't be 4 for me and 5 for you. Because if it's 4 for me and 5 for you, and that's a basic mathematical principle, then now we're doing calculations to build a bridge people are going to walk across or drive across. Well, it's 4 for me, it's right. You can see then that won't work. It will eventually bring chaos into society. So it's not just everybody having moral standards. Well, everybody's moral. No, it's what you base those moral standards upon. And every society that has based their moral standards outside of the Word of God has ended up in chaos and in destruction. The fall of the Roman Empire. I mean, we can just go down the list of what's happening, and you can see that being manifest within our society today, that there's no respect for law. There's no respect for authority. There's no respect for parents. There's no respect for life. It's how immorality. Let's see how deep we can go. Let's see how perverse that we can get. Mm-hmm. And we get to one level. No, let's go one more level down. No, let's go one more level down, to the point that now it is accepted. So what is that? That's not just people abandoning a moral belief. That is a spiritual warfare that is taking place, that is taking man back downward. I believe that demonic spirits are jealous of man because of the relationship that he has with God. That when Satan fell, I think he had that type of a relationship to a degree with Satan. And with that, then God said, "No, I'm going to start all over. I'm going to create man. I'll create man in our image." It's a whole unique. We're not the animals. We're above the animals. Yeah. We have a unique relationship with God. We're below the angels. I think that's because, again, of their proximity to God. But we have a uniqueness with God, a love relationship with Him that He designed from the very beginning. Satan thought he had us whenever we fell and said, "All right, I've got them now, and I'll show you how far I can take them downward." I mean, to the point with the Tower of Babel where God said, "No, I ain't going to do this no more. But I'm not going to destroy all of mankind. I'm just going to start back over. I still believe in mankind, so I'll start again with Moses or with Noah." But now we see this thing again progressing. Yeah. Jesus came, restored the relationship. This is a spiritual battle. And that's why I wanted to teach this, is I wanted people to see that what's happening in our culture is spiritual. Side note here, what we're seeing with Israel is not just because of the little land of Israel. Yeah. I mean, here's a small little piece of land compared to these great countries like Iran that is massive, but yet they want to stop Israel. It's not because of the resources of Israel. It's not because of the wealth of Israel. It's because Israel is occupied by the Jews, which are God's people. Yeah. And these demonic powers are saying, we're going to destroy that in every way that we can. We're seeing culture destroyed, not because, people just aren't going to church anymore. People are more open-minded. Well, they become so open-minded, their brains have fallen out.
Yeah, it's crazy, this idea of the Enchantress, wants to impact our senses, wants to use our senses to lead us away, right? Very biblical concept of our senses, our feelings, the things that we desire, they're going to lead us astray if we stay to them. But yet we live in a culture now that's like, hey, feed your senses. What you feel right sexually, go ahead, feed it. You feel right with intoxication, you're numb. You need to be numb by the world. And let's not just talk about alcohol or even psychedelics. We can talk about how we have made all drugs and overuse of drugs okay because of how quick we can get things over the counter. And now our minds are going this, that. We're numbed to everything. I'm not just talking about people in pain. I'm talking people are just taking drugs to run from anxiety, depression.
This is the newest drug.
100%.
This is the newest drug right here. Because when we think about drugs, why do I want to get drunk? Because I want to escape reality.
Exactly.
Why do I want to get high? I want to escape reality. So I can't pay my bills. I can't put food in the refrigerator. It's all empty, and so I shoot up, I drink up, I get drunk because that gets me away from it. The problem is when I come out of that, there's still no food in the refrigerator, and now my refrigerator's gone because somebody broke in and stole it while I was high. Yeah. This thing right here is becoming what is taking us away from reality. We're being sucked up into this world. Now we can say that as an adult, and it's just as bad for adults. This is killing our kids.
100%.
This is sucking their brains out of them. It is getting them into a world that is not real, and they are finding their likes, their whole attitude toward themselves based upon what they see within that screen. And so technology, which we'll talk about in another one of these, is another one of the idols that he uses to draw people away from the reality.
Yeah, it's... Without getting too far into the weeks to come, the hot take for me right now, sitting here listening to you, is maybe this idea of streaming services is actually worse than we thought. And here's why. And I know I'm already starting to scare half of y'all. There was a regulation with the television program that there were certain things that could be on, couldn't be on, the words that could be said. And I know we've seen a change of that. But when I start paying for a subscription base, I am okaying the content on that app, which I'm supporting it. So now I'm going, yes, they have ratings on, but you can go blindly into things and find yourself down a deeper hill of your senses because that's not as regulated as what is on airtime TV.
So you might as well just throw the ratings out They mean nothing anymore. They
100%.
used to, but they mean nothing anymore. And here's the hope. Maybe I can leave with some hope today. I do believe that we as a culture are waking up. I still believe that there's enough of the Word of God, maybe not in an individual, but in our society. It's not going to be easy to kick that out, that people are stopping and saying, wait a minute, we see now where this is heading. We'll talk about sexuality, where our children are being bombarded with sexual images over the internet. And every parent is saying, I see what that is doing. I see how that is destroying it. And now we're hearing the terrible, terrible stories of individuals who have been children have been pulled off into sex trafficking and all of that because of this tool. Because see, the devil uses his own drug of pride and arrogance, and he thinks I can get away with more and more and more until finally those who have known the truth wake up and say, no, I see what that is doing. So now we're even calling for regulations to be put back. No, we don't want to see that. We don't want that to happen. Protect our kids, even as far as women playing or men playing in women's sports. To where now states are standing up. That's not from a religious standpoint. They're saying, no, that's not right. That's not fair. So we're seeing these types of things. The chaos we're seeing in the streets. The protests that we're seeing in the streets. Everybody believes in freedom of speech and expression. You have a right to get together. But when they start seeing people chant death to America, when they see the values of this country of law and order being torn down, when they see police officers being shot down, there's something down inside that says, no, wait a minute, that's not the standard that we want. So I think there is an awakening that can take place, but we first got to know what's the enemy doing? And I think that's what this study on the return of the gods does. It really opens our eyes to what they did before, because the devil doesn't know any new plays. He's just doing the same playbook as he did back prior to Christianity. Well, now that we're in a post-Christian nation, people say, well, this is post-Christian. Well, then, if that's the case, then you ought to recognize these things are going to come back. How did the first century church battle them is the same way we can battle them today.
Yeah, and we can continue this conversation over and over. It's that good, and this is why this topic needs to be talked about. Last thing is you want to leave with them about the Enchantress, about how to overcome.
Well, if you weren't in our live session, you need to go back and watch that when that's dropped. You need to watch these. Watch these in order. Because they do build on each other. Because one precedes the other. Baal opened the door for Ishtar to come in, and we'll see this progression that is taking place. And I think in these sessions to come, the light's going to come on. And to the point that what they did back then now is being repeated in this culture, even to the month of the year to the day of the year. These are not coincidences. Now, you can say, well, the bull market, maybe a little, okay, I might go with that. But we're going to get into some stuff in these weeks to come that I can take you to days that haven't even had an impact, you say coincidence, of decisions that were made by the Supreme Court that took away Christian values. It's amazing. That's what Return of the Gods. Get the book, read the book, join us on Wednesday nights, and then, of course, we'll talk about it here.
The gods. Who are they? What are they? And is it possible that these beings, whose origins are from ancient times, are the unseen catalysts of modern culture? Is it possible that these gods lie behind the most pivotal events, forces and movements taking place in our nation and around the world at this very moment? Is it possible that what we in the modern world take as nothing more than ancient mythology could actually possess a reality beyond our fathoming? Who is the possessor? The enchanter? The destroyer? And the sorceress? Could a sign that has appeared all over America and the world be linked to the gods of Mesopotamia? And if so, what does it actually mean? Is it possible that the gods are even affecting your life right now? How can you recognize it? And what can you do about it?